is our world is going to start to be immersed in the music of the spheres. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be that kind of energy that's going to move us through this. Then the eighth dimension, of course, has to do with being in touch with divine consciousness. And I've got some techniques in the book for how to do that. But what happens when you're in touch with the eighth dimension is you become completely trusting, you have faith, and you exist in a state of grace. And it's just simply the way you are when you're living at that level. And then when we get into the ninth dimension, the issue of the Mayan calendar and the contemplation of time, what I find with that dimension, I hang out with that dimension a lot because what happens for me is I go into total mystical bliss. In other words, when you really get in touch with the essence of time and evolution and the creation of our world and species, it's just pure mystical bliss.
You know, there's so many things I want to ask you about here, but I do want to go back a little bit and touch a little bit upon Kellerman's work as well, and your book, obviously, The Mayan Code. And I reckon that you basically agree with the whole idea that the Mayan calendar and kind of describes an evolutionary path, you know, and this will be completed then, as you mentioned, in 2011, according to Kellerman, right?
Yes. I'm in complete agreement with him because I keep on testing him all the time. I keep watching him week by week. You know, okay, is he on or not? And
right.
Boy, he's on. Yeah.
And this is the thing. I think he's on as well. And I remember when we had him on the program last time, we talked a little bit about actually the economic collapse and things like that. And I think he was really talking about this, that this would be implemented back in 2005, 2006 sometimes. And indeed, we are seeing that happen, but we touched upon an interesting idea which has to do with the delay of the implementation, if you will, of some of these things, that down here, so to speak, on our dimension, it actually takes a little bit of time for this to fully become implemented, because it's not until now, 4 to 6 years later, that we really can see this economic collapse kind of setting in. Do you know what I mean, Barbara?
Yeah, I do. And the economic collapse, what's really, it's so confusing for us right now because, to tell you the truth, money is energy. And it's not necessarily money that's collapsing, although money, there are various factors, the euro, the dollar, and all that. We go on a lot of details. What's really collapsing is the structures, as you know, of the national and planetary underworld. And so the financial collapse is happening because of the collapse of all those structures. And I think people do better if you just keep on focusing on letting that collapse happen, because things have to change at that level. We all know. I mean, look at the latest oil disaster. We all know that it can't continue to be this way. You know, so but the financial collapse is like a what's the right word for it? It's a factor that comes about as a result of the collapse of the planetary and national underworld structures. Right.
That kind of connects a little bit, I guess, with the fourth dimension as well. Then, in that sense, the collective mind, and it's maybe a reflection over the ideas that things are changing and shaking up. Because also, I believe that the financial system is based on a kind of a false value system, and the time, hopefully, for that kind of false system is to go away in that sense, right?
Yes, and it's so the reason I brought up the Pope earlier is that when you really get into an analysis of world finance, ultimately everything leads back to the Vatican. Because when you look at the national underworld from a historical perspective, and you go back to the formation of the Catholic Church and then the development of Western economies and all that, the Church has been there as a power player in one place for so long that what they've done is they've worked themselves right into the very, very core of the financial structure of the planet. So when we speak about the Pope, I think we need to add that as an element, as well as the issue of patriarchal abuse and sexual abuse and stuff like that. And I'll just say one more thing about it regarding the fourth dimension. The biggest control factor in the fourth dimension is the world religions. The world religions came about as a development of the national underworld. That's the 5,125-year historical cycle. And so as soon as we see the beginning of civilization, like 3,100 years ago, we also see the development of religion coming in tandem with civilization. And so the theocratic forces, that's the forces of the kings. You know, there's an issue of divine kingship, and for years, people believed that if they had a divine king, then the king was in touch with God and everything was just fine. And of course, that enabled a creation of the most incredible manipulative system on this planet for 5,000 years. And so I think probably that the collapse of religion is actually the key to everything in the fourth dimension, because religion is the most potent control factor in that dimension. You follow me?
Yeah.
So I'm what I'm working on right now, I almost got a PhD in patristics, which is early church studies, but I decided not to do it. I got a master's in theology, but then I stopped there because I knew that I would get so angry with all of the teachers that I would never be able to get through the program. But what I was looking for was the keys to how they got this program in place in the first place, back 1,500 years ago. And so I really think what we're doing right now is we're actually dismantling that program. And it's not about everybody understanding theology and knowing about papal politics and all that kind of stuff, because very few people understand it. All it takes is people just realizing they don't believe anymore. And when people in Germany are faced with the just outrageous levels of abuse that obviously the Vatican was deeply involved in, a lot of people are just walking out of the church, and that's all it's going to take to collapse the program.
So, I mean, do you think then that all of this goes hand in hand in that sense, in terms of where we're going leading up to 2011 as well? I guess I'm going to go back to that idea. If there's a delay in the implementation of the changing energies, if you will, do you still think that 2011 kind of will be the date, or will it come later on our level of this?
Yeah, this is such an interesting question, and so I channeled this information back in 1995, and it's the only thing I've ever channeled, and I'm not going to channel anything more, I hope, because it's very hard to do that. But the Pleiadians said back in 1995 that all 9 dimensions would open at the end of the Mayan calendar, which I now know is 2011. So the idea would be that during 2011, now there's two factors we have to keep track of here regarding 2011. First of all, we go into day 7 of the galactic underworld, November 3rd, 2010. So it's important now that we're coming up to this time to realize that day 7 occurs first, and then 3 months after that, during February 2011, we get another time acceleration called the universal underworld. So the day 7 achievement of the galactic underworld seems to suggest, I think the whole galactic underworld has been about the development of technology, and it's been about people connecting with each other at a technological level, which is gradually is destroying the structures of the planetary and the national underworld. That's what I would say the galactic underworld has been about. So the idea would be that when day 7 arrives, then what happens is we come to the final achievement, the final creation of day 7. And so, Henrik, doesn't it feel like some kind of incredible connective fusion happening at that point as day 7 comes in? Like people are so fascinated with this latest Apple product. What's it called? The iPod or whatever.
iPad or whatever, yeah.
iPad, yeah. Well, a lot of people I don't have one because I don't do much technology, but a lot of people are telling me that there's all kinds of chips in there that access galactic locations and stuff like that. So I have a feeling something's going on technologically where a fusion is going to happen when we go into day 7. And then assuming that there's some kind of fusion, what would that mean? Well, it would mean that the connective power of the fourth dimension will start dominating over this dualistic black-white global elite control pattern. You see that?
Yeah.
And people won't necessarily understand what's going on, but I think what they will suddenly find themselves doing is they'll suddenly find themselves seeing both sides of the coin. Now, for example, the United States is the biggest terrorist and the greatest producer and user of weapons of mass destruction on the planet. And yet, the United States has made it look like they're the good guys, and everybody else on the planet are all the terrorists. You get my drift?
Sure.
well, all of a sudden I think that kind of mentality just won't work anymore. Imagine if suddenly Americans woke up and saw